Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services, and Dion McCormick, our lead solutions engineer and no relation, is on vacation this week, but who we have today is Nikos Kazantzis, another one of our solutions engineers that you've perhaps heard before in other webcasts. Many of you don't know that before Nikos Kazantzis was a solutions engineer here at Alpha, he was in fact an Alpha Anywhere customer, and he was working for a large company in the Middle East, putting up cell phone towers and maintaining cell phone towers, and he built a system, offline capable mobile application meant to do that. And today he's going to demonstrate that and talk about maybe different ways you could have approached building that application, knowing what he knows today and with the new technology that's available today in the Alpha platforms. At the end of it, if we do have time, we will do some Q&A, so you can type your questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. If not, you can always send email to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Nikos, I'm going to take you off mute here. Nikos, how's it going? Are you there?
I'm here. Hello, Dave. Hello, everyone.
Hey, excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. And you should see a dialog box.
Yep.
And I see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So, are we ready to start?
We sure are.
Okay, fantastic. So, thank you again. Welcome, everyone. We have done a similar presentation to this a couple of years ago when this software was fielded and had some months of operation behind it. So there was a slight spoiler in what Dave introed earlier, is that there's going to be a difference in this presentation because with what we know today, a lot of this would have been done in an easier way. But still, the concept still applies about what the focus of and the scope of such an app would be, and how we would approach building it from the customer perspective, but also from the developer perspective. So, as Dave said, CMRI is a software application that was built in Alpha Anywhere for a telecoms company in the Middle East, and the task is similar to any company that has field users. In this specific case, it was technicians, engineers, pole climbers, fiber optic splicing people, and generally the scope of work was related to telecoms infrastructure. So anything from cell towers to fiber optic networks to infrastructure inside data centers, and all the peripheral equipment that goes with all of these installations. So the way of operation of that was in place was a standard, voice, telephone-based system where supervisors would call the people in the field to give them updates, to give directions, to receive feedback from what was going on, to handle emergencies. So it was generally a voice-based system, and the universal method of recording data of Excel. So the gaps that were obvious in such a structure required something more advanced than that. So people needed to have automated processes instead of things being handled manually and differently each day and for each person. The back office wanted improved field awareness. They wanted to have an update of what's happening in the field during the time that it was happening, and not at the end of the day or at the end of the shift when reports would start coming in. Be able to capture data more accurately rather than people scribbling something on paper or communicating information over phone. The time spent actually on phone and IM communication to be reduced, and to be able to gather all of that data that was just captured more accurately in automated ways to produce reports. So this was developed, as I said, with Alpha Anywhere, in operation now for almost 3.5 years in 2 major countries. Many active users, even more in the actual system database to be used as reference data, but these are people that are actually using the mobile and web apps that were built. The activities of this customer required constant updates because in each project and in each country and in each department, the base type of work was the same, but the requirements for what data need to be logged, what data needed to be accessed and looked up, and what reports need to be created changed according to all those segmentations, but even changed over time as requirements grew from the customer side. So this really required a customer determined software roadmap, not an off-the-shelf commercial software application that would be constricted to just what was in that package. So that's the reason that Alpha Anywhere was selected to implement this app. There are 3 major types of users meant to be using this app. They're the dispatchers. These are the people that work in the back office. They're the ones that actually know about the work that needs to be done, and they are the ones that, up until this was implemented, they were the ones that were actually calling or emailing people in the field about what they needed to do, and the ones planning the weekly assignments, the monthly assignments, the shuffling of resources, and the organizing of the work. Then there's the field personnel. These are the people that needed to be equipped with smartphones to perform, but these are the people that actually do the work inside. So they climb towers, they repair things that are broken, they install new items of equipment, and so on. And then there's a 3rd level, which is a supervisor manager type of role. These are not data producers. These are not people that are in the field or in the back office to manage the daily work, but these are people that need to see the result of the work on a higher level. So collective data analytics and metrics about work needed to be done. Things like country managers, QA officers, CEO level type of users. So probably the biggest challenge that was hinted earlier is that this was a varied system. This was not, it was one company that needed to run this, but essentially each department had a separate running operation about regarding the type of activities done, the data needed to be logged, what the customer actually needed to see in the end as a weekly report. So the only way to make this work in a unified system was to make this as abstract as possible and as generic as possible. So we really split this up into the most general categorizations of entities possible. So anything that that comes in as a request, a notification for an action, is we call a request. We'll see later that has a number of options. Anything that is related to the actual field work, from the moment someone puts their key in the ignition to start the car, from the time they finished work on site, all of the work in there is contained in a work order with all its variances and variables. Personnel, there's a personnel database, and the personnel need to have additional data related to their status and their logs and what they were doing each day. Then work is generally described in subsegments of tasks under each of the general container of work order, and then these are logged as they're being executed. All of this data is collected into customized charts and reports, but there's still, let's say, a user-definable reach into the data to produce the daily or weekly or per department type of report required. And then the actual items, the assets, the inventory that are on site or in warehouses, these are stored in separate asset and inventory segments of the application. Now, how can a software app actually assist operation? There's some obvious items that it can immediately help with, but there are ones which are more complex but still immensely useful. So you can certainly digitize and create electronic checklists and instructions for how to do things. But one step better than that is to create templates for those, so that if you have repeated items of work that need to be done, so let's say it's a scheduled maintenance of a specific equipment or site type, then the ideal is not to need to recreate that each time when you're a dispatcher in the back office and you're planning your week's assignments, to be able to quickly pick templates and be able to distribute the work immediately from those templates without creating again and again and again the references needed. Best match assignment. So yes, I can send information to people in the field, and I can send it electronically now with such an application. But can I go one step further? Can I say I have a number of tasks and jobs needing to be done? I have a number of people in the field. How do I optimally assign the work that I have to the people in the field? And there are various criteria to choose from. There is, what is the proficiency of the people in the field, depending on the job that needs to be done? Is there some segregation of area of responsibility, so people only are responsible for the northern part of the region, or some other people responsible for in-city or out-of-city areas? What is the availability? Are people on shift? Are they already available on occupied another job? So one thing is assignment, another thing is best match assignment, and software was built to help in that as well. Obviously, mobile devices, making the most of the mobile capabilities available in smartphones. And that includes now the capability to do live updates. So when something is logged in the field, the huge immediate advantage of the back office is that with no other action, they already have a reference and a view to that data as it's being collected. Equipment and spares handling. So can I have an inventory list in my application, in my database? That's fine and perfect. But can I also now give access to that data live from the field? So can I check what type of equipment is installed in a site before I visit it, so I can bring along the proper spares that I need or might probably need before even reaching the site? Or can I do a live inventory check in a warehouse to see if the spare that I'm looking for actually exists in the warehouse close to me, or do I need to move further away to get what I need? And then the logging and reporting. I said customer use is a main requirement, but internal use is equally important on the company side, because that then helps people optimize how they use their available resources every day. This is a list of activities that before implementing CMRI were performed manually, that are now performed via the system. And you will get an understanding, if you just go through a few of these, that the complexity behind each of them and the margin for error and misunderstanding and even wrong data at each step of these processes is significant when we're talking about a manually performed process. The advantage of doing it via an application, via a database, via predefined validation rules about what is being entered into fields, what is being dispatched, what are the rules for assigning work to someone, getting live data from the database to the field directly with no intervening person to communicate that information, has made a significant difference to the way daily work is performed. So this is, as we said, the main task and challenge was to make such a broad system work in the most generic way possible. And the most generic way possible is to say, in the end, that there's just one central core element of everything, and that is there is some work needing to be done. It's as general as that. There are multiple triggers to that. It might be a trouble ticket from a help desk. It might be a third-party request. It might be an internal plan and schedule like we have here. It might be a completely ad hoc request coming from the customer. But still, that ends up as an activity that needs to be worked on. And that creates a work order, a single entity containing all the information that people need to reference later on, 2 months, 3 months later, when they're trying to review what happened. They need all of that data in there from start to finish. So that's what this is. It begins with some static lookups, so things like the site database. So what site do we need to visit? The address, coordinates, site notes, type of site that is there, and work order templates. Is this a corrective maintenance job? Is this a scheduled maintenance job? Is it a revisit? Is it a snag fix? And templates depending on the type of work that we are expected to do. And then as we're assigning this work order to people in the field, we compare against static data. So I have a team of 20 fiber optic splicers, and I know their personnel data, but I can also check their live data. So I have 20, but only 15 of them are on shift right now, and this is a corrective maintenance job with a resolve time of a few hours. So I need someone who's on the field now. I need someone who I can check to see is nearest to the site that they need to visit, and that live data, and they're available for work. So that live data is what feeds in and allows me to make the proper selection and then actually dispatch this work. When this work is dispatched, notifications are sent, email, SMS, and push, and that gets the work order out to the mobile device. Once it's out there, two parallel streams, branches start out. Obviously on the mobile side, once we have the work order data loaded on the device, then work is initiated and it's executed and it's logged as it's being executed. Everything from this point on works offline. Simultaneously on the backend side, obviously if it's offline, there's no other update, but until it's synced again. But if it is online or when it is synced again, then these back office users are able to view details, photos captured from the site, notes taken, tasks completed, and even track the location of people on a map. And now that it's it, the work order is closed and placed in the archive and available for reporting, for dashboards, and for a reviewing of activities later on. These were some user surveys performed after the system was implemented for a while to actually validate that people were seeing efficiencies in how they were doing their job with CMRI compared to without it. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, especially on that core part that says now there is a back office that knows what the field is doing accurately and repeatably. If you see most of the comments here from the survey, a large majority is related to, I can trace my field team. I know where my people are in the field, and I don't need to call them every time. So some quick screens from the web application, from the dashboard, from the back office application. So a list of trouble tickets, for example, with SLA times for resolving them, work orders created or not, the type of issue found, the site, and the direct creation of the work order from all the trouble tickets, so you don't need to copy that data again. This is an example of work orders. So this is an assignment in a specific site to do this type of activity. It's assigned to this person, created by this dispatcher, and a live update for things as they are ongoing, for photos taken, notes taken, inventory items used, and tasks, specific tasks if they were defined and if they were completed or not, and how many people were assigned to this job. All of this obviously searchable, filterable, sortable, exportable, and live updated. This is the a dispatch screen and the optimized assignment that we were mentioning. So this is a list of TI engineers in the rollout department who are all on shift. And in trying to determine who is the optimum one to send to the specific site that this work order relates to, I have, apart from the static data, so these are the people I have, I have already filtered this to show only the applicable personnel for this type of work. I'm also seeing live data. I'm seeing live updated from the field what these people are doing at each moment. And this update comes directly from them. The technicians and the engineers in the field via their mobile app have marked what they're doing at each moment. So and when they're marking it, their last mark also comes with a lat long a set of values. So knowing the site location of the work order and knowing the site location of each person, I just do a calculation and know the distance of each user to the site that I need, that this work order is created for. So combining this with a live update of what people are doing and how many work orders, open work orders, are already assigned to them, just by going through this list without making a single phone call or manually communicating with anyone, I can immediately pick out a couple of people that would be optimum for this task. So Prabhu has no work orders assigned. He's 30 kilometers away. Nagarajan, he's not even moving anywhere. He's just sitting idle on shift, no work orders, and is 30 kilometers away. So he's the one I'd probably pick for this task. And this happened within a minute of my looking at the screen without making 20 phone calls to people to find out what they are and what they're doing, especially in the middle of the day if something urgent comes up. As we said, all location or status updates are marked with location, so I can quickly check on a map. And apart from the nice looking visual that this provides, this is a quick way, if I know the site of the location of a critical incident that I need to manage as a dispatcher, I can very quickly just graphically check which people are doing what in each site by hovering my mouse over each one, so I can just contact the person I need immediately if there's something urgent. Basic and more advanced charts and reports. So things like how many work orders were closed for each month and for each week. This kind of collection of data before such a system took hours, days sometimes, because it was a manual process of collecting Excel sheets, notes, SMS message checking, and all of the combination of the above to produce a final count of what was done. So it could be done, but it took a lot of effort and combination of multiple data sources to produce that. Here, as long as people are logging information in the system while they're creating the work order and as they're managing it, such a report is a click away. And it's not only the speed, it's the accuracy. You can rely, people looking at this graph can rely on this figure because it came from a system. It did not come from someone manually aggregating 10 different Excel sheets where he might make a mistake and produce a different result next time. Some more advanced stats that help people manage their resources more effectively is to say, I pick a certain time period, I pick the users that have done activities, and I can see for that same time period how many work orders were performed and closed by these people, and what's the average hours that these people spent on each of the activities. And what this quickly shows is, first of all, overutilization versus underutilization, and it also shows effectiveness. If I've got a GPON technician, which is taking an average of 7 hours per work order, and I've got an exactly the same technician at exactly the same time period under the same department that takes an average of 2.7 hours, there's something amiss here. That is just a trigger for the dispatcher to go in and check why this is happening, what is the mismatch here, and what are the ways to improve that so this person is not taking 3 times the amount of time that this person is taking. So these kind of inefficiencies are very difficult to see when you're managing people in a standard normal way. When you get to this level, the data just pops up in front of you and it's very quick to get to such insights. Additional dashboards, live dashboards, critical dashboards for open trouble tickets and SLAs achieved or not, and trouble tickets by priority. These are just staying on screen for people to see as the day progresses. And moving to the mobile app, as we said, the list of assignments that need to be executed is now coming in digitally. So the site, the description, date scheduled, date due, and extra information like navigation directions. So we know the destination, we know the location of the user from the mobile app, and that automatically allows us to plot a route. A complete work order management. So every part of the activity that is executed during a work order is reviewed and logged in this section here in the individual subsections. Additional capabilities like floor plan. So when you're visiting a large site, just having a lat long is not enough. It might get you to the entrance, but your generator room might be somewhere else inside that site and not immediately accessible via lat long. So additional site maps linked with each site help you get to where you need to go. An asset database. So for each site, the equipment installed inside, the data for the equipment, and the manuals that you can assign to each individual model type. So whenever in any of the thousands of sites that type of equipment is encountered, then these documents pop up and are available for you to view directly without trying to look up that specific manual. Photo attachments are a large part of the application. So multiple photos per site per visit, and obviously these mirrored on the a website as soon as they are attached and synced from the mobile app. And task lists for each of the work orders to segregate the work in more discrete elements to say what other things need to be done, are they complete or not, when were they completed, and a mirror of that on the back end. Now, probably the single most complex part of the CMRI mobile application was the electronic forms section, because up until now, we described a very generic way to get to our data and to get to our work information. But when we need to fill in forms, the forms have various types. Each activity essentially has a different form. So building separate apps for each is not realistic. So we had to implement a data-driven form structure using Alpha Anywhere, and we did it with a feature list that matched the complete end-to-end requirement. So multiple form types parsed dynamically to show on mobile. It could have various data types, dynamic arbitrary fields, identification strings, make the form look a little bit more manageable with sections and labels, a browser component for a quick update, and have the equivalent components on the website. So a grid and then PDF reports. This works starting with a printed form, the form that is used up until that point, that is converted to a data structure, so essentially a set of fields and the data type, and then on the mobile app that is parsed and then displayed dynamically. As the data is captured, it's uploaded to the database, and then a dynamic grid viewer type of component shows the data that was collected and then exports it to a report built via the report writer, one per form type, that then lays it out in a form closely matching what we started out with here on the left. The fields have various types, again, as we said, so different keyboards or entries shown like lists or numeric keyboards or maps, depending on the type of field that we have. Data groups, so a set of fields repeating an arbitrary number of times, and custom form listings as we're filling the various forms to show the IDs of each. So for those of you who have seen our Alpha Transform product, this was essentially a similar type of approach. It is a data-driven forms application, exactly because there's so dozens of different forms that are not realistic to build in the standard way of building mobile apps that we would use in Alpha Anywhere or in any other software development system, where we would define the fields and the layout of each app screen by screen, statically, one by one. This needs a data-driven approach, and we had to implement that from scratch. So very quickly in the development effort, so the complete application was built using Alpha Anywhere. No other product needed to be used. The web application used standard Tab UI Grid UX components. The mobile application was a phone gap application for the main app, and then a UX component, a separate UX component connected to the main app used for the data-driven forms. If we focus on the mobile side and focus on the functional elements that the mobile app includes, as we saw in the previous slides, it had things like user status updates, it had work order assignments and items, work order dispatching, and also data capturing of the fields related to each work order. We had task lists, we had site location information navigation, we had capabilities to view assets and sites based on an asset database and a mapping, and we could also have an inventory lookup capability. We didn't see that in the previous slides, but you could live check the warehouse and not only see the assets installed in a site, but also check spares, consumables available in a warehouse. You can check the work order history, everything is retained and available, and the data-driven forms part that we just described. So if we split that out into discrete blocks of functionality that we would build when we're building a mobile app, we would say that we need user authentication, obviously. We need something like a work order list, which needs to be limited per user and needs to be searchable, filterable, and obviously updatable. We need hierarchical lists. So we said we have, for example, a site element, but then underneath that we have site information, site assets, inventory. Then work orders have notes, have tasks, have additional info. So it's a multi-level hierarchical structure, exactly because we needed to place, as we said at the beginning, everything under a single entity called a work order, because that's the only way you can make it generic enough to work across the board in all of the various implementations. Attachments, uploading of photos, user status location updates with GPS capture, and then a data-driven forms component with the database to match behind it. So even specifically for the mobile app, this app was built using multiple Alpha Anywhere developers, expert developers. It took a significant number of man-months, even just for the mobile app. The two were developed in parallel, the web side and the mobile side. But several man-months alone were required just for the mobile app. And it was about 6 calendar months to our first system implementation in the first country. And it didn't stop there because, as I said, as things evolved and as this application needed to be installed in other countries, other departments, and additional requirements, the effort to update, enhance, bug fix was constant and above the kind of effort that we see here. So that was the effort up until the successful delivery of the project. Bringing this to today, I'm sure, as I said, that the people that are already aware of Alpha Transform will have already found some similarities of what the CMRI mobile app needed to do, and what was built manually inside Alpha Anywhere to do it, and the kind of things that Transform has been built for, and especially, ideally that data-driven forms part. So an immediate obvious question is, today, would it be able to implement the CMRI mobile app or sections of that app using Transform and have it work in the same way, so to have the same end capabilities? So just an overview of the Transform concept for those of you who are not familiar. So the standard way that we develop a mobile app, either via native methods or via low code, Alpha Anywhere, or any other platform, is a standard development process. We have the requirements, we sit down and design them, we get expert developers, they have to build at least this category of and this collection of features. Then we build, we test, we rebuild, we publish, we debug, we rebuild, we distribute again. Ideally, this will take weeks. For a reasonably complex production level application after debugging, this will take months. And that is the delivered mobile app. And this is just one app. If you need more apps or updates to that app, then it's multiple versions of this. So you need either more developers or more time to implement it. So this is the obvious way, and this is the way we also followed to build CMRI. The Transform concept is that this final app that takes weeks and months to build for that one version has already been built by Alpha. But it's a blank app. It doesn't have anything inside it. It is a data-driven app. So it has all of these features already embedded in it. But what you need to do as a developer is to configure those elements to work for essentially forms. Forms are like sub-apps that you have inside your the app that you already get from Alpha with Transform. So you design your form, you add business logic, which says this field needs to be validated against that value. It's a higher value, it's a lower value. Or you do calculations like summaries and any kind of business logic you need to add. You configure any outbound data if you need to store the data that you're collecting somewhere outside the Transform environment. And that is really it. You can go from a requirement to a published, production-ready, enterprise-level online offline app in a matter of hours, realistically. And the huge advantage comes when you need to build more apps for that same group and set of users, because it is still the same app. It is a data-driven app. So the second implementation that you need to do, for not this time for site surveys, but for equipment inspections, it will still run in the same app. It's just a different form. So it's a second version of that, still running in that already pre-created app. So that is, again, a matter of hours to configure and deliver out to the field. And it is a matter of minutes to make changes to it. So if you do need to make an update to an already designed form, you configure it once centrally, you push it out, and every mobile device under the account, 10, 50, 100, have that update already there. So the obvious question coming here is, it's a pre-built app. So can a pre-built app really be flexible and powerful enough at the same time to cover all the various set of requirements that we just went through in the CMRI example? So a standard data capture app, something that would be considered minimum to consider anything worthy of being placed into production, would have this basic set of requirements. So you'd have multiple field types, so a rich set of data types to capture. You'd have obviously connection to databases, stored data that you're capturing. You'd have a responsive design, so you can make it work on smartphones and tablets and turn them landscape and portrait. It would still continue to work. You should be able to search and sort through the forms that you are filling in. You should have logging in, credentials, authentication, and you should run on both platforms and multiple versions of these. So this standard set of features, you could not launch really much without this set of features, is already part of Transform. That is already built into that core application. If we were to consider a more advanced version of a data capture app, we would add things like user permissions. So yes, people are allowed to log in, but are they allowed to do everything once logging in? Or do they have subsets of functionality they're allowed to access? Or if they have 10 forms in the account, can everyone access everything? Or are you allowed to only see a subset for your department, for example? So user permissions. Then APIs and webhooks and triggers. So yes, we are accessing data from our database or writing data back, but can we also access external data sources? Can we reach out to an API and fetch a set of values to use in our form and in our mobile app? Can we write out to an API to feed the data that we're collecting to an existing external system that is already built and waiting for that data to be able to create reports on it? And do we have online and offline support? Online obviously is there, but offline built in. Can I continue to capture data as I'm working, even without network connection? And can I just sync back when the network is restored? So this additional set of data, which you don't find in all of the data capture apps that you might find out there, is also built in the Transform. So there's no effort to technically implement them. And then there's the really custom elements, things like business logic that we mentioned in the previous slide. So in-app calculations and validations of the data being entered. Actual lookups, what to do with the lookup values, where you're pointing to, what is the data you're bringing back, and what type of fields you're filling in based on that lookup. And on-device data, not only look up remote databases, but also can I have local database? Can I have local files on my device? So this is the ultimate offline capability, which says I can not only capture data, but I can actually read and access reference data on my device all while offline. And this is also available in Transform. So if we consider the list of features, as we said, the kind of things that we would want in a mobile app and compare in the kind of mobile app that we described for CMRI, and we compare the build effort to implement with Alpha Anywhere to compare with Transform, almost everything is simpler. Some of it significantly so. So the data capture part, so to set up all of the various capture fields with the proper input methods to go with them, is certainly simplified in Alpha Anywhere compared to doing it in a native way. But I'm sorry, the effort to do it in not sure why it's showing like that there. The effort to do it in a Transform is nil. Similar for adding additional features, building data-driven forms. As I said, the single most complex element that we had to build is already built in. So for this set of features, the Transform implementation is very fast, significantly faster, and that's why we said it's realistic to say that you can actually deliver a working production level app in a matter of hours to the field. And this is what we did. So in the example that I set up here, I started to make a mirror of what we had in the mobile CMRI app in Transform. And in approximately 8 hours, as I mentioned, it was possible to build an almost feature complete version of the CMRI mobile application with the feature set that was just described. So user authentication, work order lists, reading, updating, entering new ones, hierarchical lists, various levels of data within a work order, attaching and uploading of photos, location updates of users with status updates, and the data-driven forms part, which is the most complex part, is actually Transform. It is the platform itself. So the end result is a significantly and almost an order of magnitude faster implementation to get a working application out in the hands of users. Now, this is all related to the mobile app, obviously. A large part of the CMRI application has a backend, and it has back office components like we showed for the dashboards and the grids and the work order assignment. So definitely that is an effort when you're building a complete solution, an end-to-end app. But even there, Alpha Anywhere now and for the past year includes controls that have built-in integrations with the transform backend. So a list control now has a data source option of transform. So the same things that we could do essentially no code, like any CRUD operations against an SQL database, we now have the same capability in AUX list control to do it with the Alpha Anywhere list against transform. So that makes it easier even to build those types of components and complete the solution, mobile and website. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. Dave, do we have some time to go through the actual mobile app?
We do, and we have a couple questions as well. So why don't we do the questions because they're pretty quick. The first one has to do with the driving distance. You had talked about how it would, calculate driving distance. Now, is that actual driving distance, or is that just straight line as the crow flies kind of distance?
As the crow flies. At that point, okay. I'm not sure we could get through the API, or we didn't go that far. To get the driving distance, it's a different answer that you get back from the Google API. This is just a comparing lat long of origin, lat long of destination as the crow flies type of calculation.
Oh, I see. So you wouldn't even you could do that calculation offline if you needed to, right? I mean, if it's
absolutely. Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, in the desert where this was actually running, that was probably a very good approximation.
I see. You're driving across the sand anyway, so
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. But the Google API does do that. So if you do have signal, it is a possibility certainly to wire that in.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question was transform. Does it work on tablets as well as mobile phones? We know it works on phones, but can you tell us something about its tablet use?
It does work on tablets, and I'm actually going to do the demo on a tablet.
Nice.
We can actually have responsive behavior, so we can define in the same form definition in transform. We can define different layouts. This is no code. This is still wizard based. To say if you're running on a small type of device, then do this layout. If you're running on a larger one, that layout, and you have multiple of those groups that you can define. So things like a portrait smartphone or a landscape smartphone or a portrait tablet or a landscape tablet. So you can really lay out what you want. But even if you don't, even if you just create one layout, it's still responsive. So if you create a multi-field row and it doesn't fit, it will just wrap around normally like you would expect it to do.
Terrific. And one last question, and this could be a long answer, but we don't have to make it a long answer, which is, okay, you've shown Transform as the data collection system, but is there any sort of web back office or anything for administrators?
There certainly is. There is the Transform Central environment is where we do all of the back office type of work. So that's where we design our forms. That's where we give users permissions to do things in the system. That's where we add users. And that's where we have a management console to review the data being collected and be able to do things like, export the data to Excel or email and things like that. There is the real power comes in what we call the unsubmit events. And the unsubmit events are automatic triggers that happen in the Transform backend whenever a form is submitted. So outside of the Transform infrastructure, you can say, you know what, I have an SQL database sitting somewhere that I've already built for my company, and I want my time attendance and timesheet data that I'm collecting via Transform actually going to that system because that's where I need it in the end. So what you can do in the Transform backend is to say there's an on-submit event. So the moment a form is submitted, you take the fields that you need out of that and you say there's an API endpoint somewhere waiting, and you just feed that data to that API endpoint. And even more powerful, if you have a connection string to that database. So if someone has opened up that database like you would in an Alpha Anywhere app, you can actually create a mapping file that will say, take that specific field from the Transform form submitted and store it in that table, in that field on the remote SQL database. So it's essentially no code capability to get your data from transform to your final resting point for your data.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, yep, that
Sure.
is it for questions. If you want to go into the demo, that would be fantastic. We have about 10 minutes.
Perfect. I'll try to make it quick. So this is the Transform mobile app. As I said, this is a single app. You download it from the App Store. It's just one app. And right now I filtered it to show only Transform. But if I take you to the Add Form screen, you'll see a large number of form types that I have in the system. Each one of these is essentially a different app. If I was building in a standard way, I would have to build a separate app for each of these. And they're totally different. One is a manual reference. So I want to have a documentation library on my mobile for equipment. And the other one is CMRI that we'll see just now. So it is extremely flexible to be able to have all of such a different array of forms on the same device. So let me just jump in and create a new one. So I'm going to create a new instance of Transform CMRI. And there it is. So I have my sections of work. So I go to my details where I describe my work order category. I can have a drop-down list, or I can type things in. So I can say here, power, if I could type, power failure. Okay, and I have a site code. The site code comes from a drop-down, so I can pick the drop-down, and I get a populated list of the details for that site location, and I can navigate. For those of you who've been watching Transform Tuesdays, we've shown this before from another form, so I can directly go and get directions for where I need to navigate to get to the site. Now, I also have work data. So I want to mark the start of my work and the end of my work. And for concerned and suspicious managers out there, I want to make sure that people don't fake this. So the moment they press start work, it is automatically timestamped, and I don't have the option to edit it anymore. So I meant to mark that the moment I start my work, and I meant to mark end in the same way. So after I've marked it at the start of my work and end of my work, that's it. It's timestamped, and I can't change it. I can add location capture. I can add signatures to confirm that it's me. And then I go into the actual task. So if I have tasks that I need to do, I just add them in a list dynamically and arbitrarily. I don't need to predefine what these are. I could if I wanted, if I pre-filled the form for someone to fill in. But as I'm doing something, I can just fill it in. So I can type in my text here. I can pick a category. So this is install, and this is a cabinet. And I can add a new one underneath if I want. Now, this is still static data. I can add photos, obviously, as we showed previously in the screenshot. Again, one or more with a description. I can also do lookups. So if I go to parts and say, I want to add a new part that I need to use, then again, we get an arbitrarily expandable section. But now, when I'm clicking my field, I see a cascading list. And the way I built the cascading list is based on a data source that I have here. So let's say this is my database. I just built it for Google Sheets. It could be any data source. And let's say this is my inventory list. So I've got a field that describes the type and then the details. Okay, so when I'm in here and I get a first, and this is all done dynamically. I didn't predefine any of this. This is all just business logic built inside the form that translates this. So I didn't type in any of this manually. So when I pick MCB, miniature circuit breaker, then when I go to part code, I've got a cascading list. So I'm only seeing the items that I need. And more importantly for the application, for the functionality of it, I see the quantity that is available inside each warehouse. And I could have the same item in multiple warehouses as we see here. Okay, so let's say I pick this one. And sorry about that. And let's say I want to request a quantity. So I can have a validation here to say I asked for 22. So I can have a check here that says this is more than the available, so you can't really request that, so you can reset it. Things like that are easily configured in the business logic. So all of the other fields are filled in, and then the quantity can be checked live against the warehouse. So wherever my database is, I just made this, for a quick and easy reference. This could be any database that has an endpoint, a REST API endpoint that can feed me back my data. Photos, notes, again, in an arbitrary way. User status, remember, we had people marking what they were doing at each moment. So working in site, automatically timestamped, I can't save it. I can modify it. So next time I sort of finished in site, and then I'm returning to base. So all of these timestamped, and then all of this data, everything that I've collected at this point, when I sync back, so up until this point, everything works offline. Everything is saved on my device. And the moment I sync, so by pressing upload, then all of my form instances, so you see I had another one open. Oops, not sure why that happened. Then these are synced to the server, and you can see that I have an identifier here that allows me to separate the various forms that I'm filling in between them. So if I have multiple ones at the same time, then I can quickly jump to the one I need. Dave, I'm not sure what that error was, but let me just,
that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, this it doesn't take as long. Let me just split it out and get it back.
Yeah.
Okay, that's essentially the demo I had to do. So this app was completed in around 8 hours, including the backend, including the code, including the lookups. So it's pretty faster to implement compared to anything comparable that we would want to do in any, I would say, low code environment, not only Alpha Anywhere, but really anything else.
Right, but so by way of comparison, how long do you think it would have taken you in Alpha Anywhere just to build out the functionality that you had there? Talking a month, couple months, couple weeks?
Well, I had it here.
Yep.
And the numbers I had were, so there were certainly many man months just for the mobile app to reach launch, and several man months after that to do the updates, the expansions, and several man months after that just to build the forms, the data-driven forms part.
Yeah.
And the other challenge that there's no way around of is the calendar months aspect of it. So you can gather as many requirements as you want, and you can draw on the table, but the moment people get the app in their hands, all sorts of additional requests, features, changes, things that you didn't know beforehand come up. So the capability to get an app into the hands of users next day or extremely quickly is an additional factor in getting a final working version out to people, because your requirements come in much quicker than you would expect in a normal development cycle like this.
That makes sense. Well, great. Hey, Nikos, thank you very much. We have come to the end of our time. Thanks everyone who joined us today. We will be back next week with Dion, and we'll be taking your questions then as well. If you do have any questions, though, between now and then, go ahead and send an email to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com. Thanks again, Nikos. To everyone else,
My pleasure.
Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.